Humans have lived in the Laguna for as long as 11,000 years. Before European settlement, the Laguna supported abundant elk, antelope, grizzly bear, and vast flocks of migrating waterfowl. It also supported a thriving population of native Californians who relied on the Laguna's abundant resources for food and shelter.
They talk about herds of elk crossing the Laguna right about where the traffic backs up now to the stoplight in Sebastopol. Across that area, people talk about seeing mountain lions and bobcat, obviously, and river otter and all kinds of bird life. What the settlers did to the Laguna and what has been done to it through the years up until fairly recently. You know, by our standards, our ecological standards would be considered criminal, but by their standards it was simply practical. If you had a lake in your front yard, and this was a whole chain of lakes going down to the river, you simply figured out a way to drain it so you could use the land underneath, which you knew was prime agricultural land. They put in pipes filled with dynamite to make channels. They hitched their horses to Fresno scrapers, kind of like a road grader, and went out and took down the barriers to drain all these lakes, Lake Ballard, Lake Honeve, and the lakes that had been used for recreation around before the turn of the century. You've seen the picture of the women in the big hats with their, I think maybe a parasol, I don't remember exactly, in their canoes or boats out boating on the Laguna, and it was a place for picnics and recreation. San Francisco was a gold rush town, and a gold rush boom town. In 1848, the Mexican War was just over. The Mexican settlers here, which was, the area was just 24 large land grants, they dealt in cattle, in hides and tallow from their cattle, and had done nothing in the way of agriculture. So feeding the people of San Francisco was a challenge, and it was the commercial hunters who were the first to exploit this area, and they killed the Petaluma River, and here they killed everything that moved that was edible. They killed ducks by the hundreds, I'm sure by the thousands. They killed small animals. They sold them in San Francisco for lumps of gold. We have pictures, of them with 60 ducks. One man with 60 ducks, and another man with 40 quail. And it wasn't until about 1895 that the first laws were passed that set limits on taking wild game and fish. And people would come and take hundreds of fish. One fisherman go home with nearly 100 fish as long as he could keep pulling them out. The Native American people, the Pomo and the Coast Miwok, who used this area and used it for, they had villages, or their villages is maybe the wrong word, because they were migratory people. They moved with their hunting and their fishing and their acorns, but they did live along the edges. They came for ceremonials. They made their tule houses out of the plants that grew along the Laguna, and they also used their tules along with balsa wood to make the canoes that they used to fish. And they were, as in the case of all the rest of the land around here, they were very good stewards of the land, much better than the people who came after them. There's a story that Richard Henry Dana tells, and he wrote 2 years before The Mast, and he wrote some other books and other things about early California. And he tells a story about Jose Ramon Carrillo, who was the son of the family that settled the Rancho Cabeza de Santa Rosa and the Llano de Santa Rosa. And this area, the Laguna area, was part of the Llano. Llano is a Spanish word which means delta or plain. Dana exploited him as the last of the conquistadores kind of thing. Apparently he was kind of a flamboyant guy. And he told a story about how Jose Ramon, several stories about how he fought grizzly bears. And he tells a story, which is, I'm sure, apocryphal, about Jose Ramon riding his horse across the Llano, probably a little bit south of Sebastopol, and being pursued by a grizzly bear. And of course, grizzly bears were rampant, I guess would be the word. Our bear flag, the California bear flag, attests to the presence of these what is it, Ursus horribilis, and I think they were very fierce creatures. And this grizzly was pursuing Jose Ramon, according to the story, and Jose Ramon and his horse both fell into a sinkhole, which indicates that there were a number of these along in the llano here. And so did the grizzly bear, who was going so fast he couldn't stop. And now I don't know the dimensions of this sinkhole, but you can visualize that you've got the horse and Jose Ramon and the grizzly bear all in the hole. And according to the story, the grizzly bear started trying to get out. And so Jose Ramon, with his horse underneath, gave the grizzly bear a boost and helped him on the way. And he took off and went off down the plain. And I guess Jose Ramon and the horse scrambled their way out too. But this is sort of the he who fights and runs away lives to fight another day kind of story. Well, the bad news, of course, is that we can't ever bring the Laguna back to where it was in its original state. I mean, we're not going to see the yellow-billed cuckoo or these wonderful herds of hundreds of elk crossing at the Sebastopol crossing. But the good news is that in the last decade, or maybe decade and a half, the cities of Santa Rosa and Sebastopol and the Laguna Foundation now have taken the kind of interest in the Laguna as a natural treasure that has to be taken in order to preserve it and maybe to reclaim it, to bring back some of what can be salvaged. I always thought it was interesting that the farmers who dynamited the lakes and took the land called that reclaiming the land, reclamation, which is, it was never theirs. How could they be reclaiming it? I think now we really have the use of that word. We're reclaiming it for nature and for a nature preserve, for wildlife sanctuary, for education, and for the future, for the whole ecosystem. And I think that this is a wonderful thing.